Hello, in this session of chemistry, we evaluate the particulate nature of matter. Welcome. Matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. Matter in its form exists in varied distinct units referred to as element, atom, ion, molecule, radical, and compound. When we evaluate these distinct units of matter, we refer to them as the particulate nature of matter simply because matter exists in varied forms and parts. To begin with, what is an element? An element is simply defined as a pure indivisible form of matter which does not split by the chemical means. In this case, we may have an element such as nitrogen, represented by the chemical symbol N, or hydrogen by the chemical symbol H, or oxygen by the chemical symbol O, or sulfur by the chemical symbol S, or even sodium by the chemical symbol Na, and many other. Secondly, atom. An atom is referred to as the smallest uncharged form of an element. In this respect, the chemical symbol for an atom is identical to the chemical symbol of that particular element. Namely, if it is hydrogen, the chemical symbol will be H. If it is nitrogen, it will be N. So, an atom is simply the smallest uncharged form of an element. Thirdly, we have the ion. The ion is referred to as the smallest charged form of an element. Namely, whenever an atom of an element loses an electron, it acquires a characteristic positive charge simply because the electron that it loses is negatively charged, while before it loses, the number of protons are equal to the number of electrons, protons being positive and electrons being negative, making the atom characteristically neutral. However, when the atom loses an electron, it carries an excess of a positive charge and becomes a cation. A cation in this case is a positively charged form of an ion. Remember, an ion is a charged form of an element. Secondly, if an atom acquires an electron from another element, the acquired electron is negatively charged and will make the neutral atom characteristically negative. In this respect, the ion which is characteristically negative is referred to as an anion. Therefore, an anion is a negatively charged form of ion. We have said that 1. An element is a pure indivisible form of matter which does not split by the chemical means. Secondly, that an atom is the smallest uncharged form of an element. And thirdly, that the ion is the smallest charged form of an element and manifests in two forms, as cations and as anion. As a cation, the ion is positively charged, and as an anion, it is negatively charged. So there is the ion. It forms negatively charged ions known as anion, and it forms positively charged ions known as cation. Remember, ions are derivatives of element which come from an atom. Now, next we have what we are referring to as molecules. A molecule is simply a group of uncharged atoms existing as a unit without an aggregate charge. They differ with what we call radicals, in the sense that radicals are also a group of atoms existing as a unit, but with a characteristic or aggregate charge. In this case, therefore, we can say that both molecules and radicals are a group of atoms which exist as a unit. While molecules carry no distinct charge, the radicals carry an aggregate and distinct charge. Now we have compounds. What is a compound? A compound is simply a group of atoms which are chemically combined. And when atoms chemically combine, they characteristically form ions, positively charged known as cations and negatively charged known as anions. And then, because of the electrostatic forces of attraction, cations being positive attracts the anions which are negative, and they form a characteristic bond which is referred to as an ionic bond. Therefore, most and particularly all compounds are ionically formed bonds. In this case, a compound is defined simply as a chemically combined group of atoms. I want to give an illustration using the structure given in this lower board. And if you look at it keenly, first and foremost, we have an element and with an example of nitrogen and oxygen. So, as an atom, we said that an atom is the smallest uncharged form of element, which has a chemical symbol that is identical to the particular element. In this case, the atom nitrogen is represented as N with the chemical symbol and oxygen as O. Now, these are atoms which are the smallest uncharged forms of element. Second, we have ion. If you want to represent the ion of nitrogen, we will assume that it acquires 3 electrons, so it becomes N3 minus. And in that case, it is an anion or a negatively charged ion. The second one is oxygen, which will carry 2 negative charges, in this case, the oxide ion. So we have the nitride ion and the oxide ions, which are ions formed from atoms of respective elements. Thirdly, fourthly, here we have molecules. Molecule is group of atoms which exist as a unit without an overall charge. In this case, if we combine 2 nitrogen atoms, we may have N2, which is a nitrogen molecule and represent the nitrogen gas. If we combine 2 oxygen, we end up with O2, which is the oxygen gas. So the molecule for nitrogen is N2, the molecule for oxygen is O2, which are group of atoms existing as a unit without an aggregate charge. Next, we have radicals. Radicals has been described as a group of atoms existing as a unit with an aggregate charge. We may form something like nitrate, NO3 minus, or nitrite, NO2 minus, where the nitrate is the parent form of oxide of nitrogen that carries a charge, while the nitrite is a subset of the nitrate that is formed when the nitrate loses an oxygen. In this respect, therefore, we can say that nitrate and nitrite are radicals of nitrogen. Compounds are a group of atoms which are chemically combined. We may have something like copper 2 nitrate, represented as CuNO3 in bracket subscript 2. We may also have something like ammonium nitrite. So ammonium nitrite will be represented there as NH4NO2. And in this respect, we say that compounds are a group of atoms which are chemically combined. So with this clear illustration, we can conclusively say that the particulate nature of matter represent varied forms of matter. In this case, we said matter matter is anything which has mass and occupies space. So therefore, matter can exist as solid, liquid, or gas. And since matter carries chemical composition, the chemical composition of matter is what is referred to as element, and its varieties as atoms or ions. And then from these, we may form molecules, radicals, and compounds. Summarily, we say that the element there is a pure, indivisible form of matter which does not split by the chemical means. Secondly, we say that the atom is the smallest uncharged form of an element. Thirdly, we say that the ion is the smallest charged form of an element, and that the ion exists in 2 forms, namely cations, which are positively charged ions, and anions, which are negatively charged ions. And then we looked at molecules, and we say that molecules are a group of atoms which exist as a unit without an aggregate charge. We have distinguished between molecules and radicals by saying that a radical or radicals are a group of atoms which exist as a unit with an aggregate charge. Beyond that, we have looked at compounds, and we have said specifically that compounds are a group of atoms which are chemically combined and carry no overall charge. So that is the particulate nature of matter, or the breakdown of matter into its varied chemical composition. Thank you. I look forward to meeting again in our next video.